Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, Autumn Adventure, exploring Maine's wild coast, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Kaden Dearing. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Kaden, take it away.
Thank you, Rob. Good afternoon for everybody that's maybe stateside, or good morning for a couple of you folks that are good evening, good day to everyone, really. Very excited about our webinar today. This is an itinerary that has been gaining quite a bit of popularity over the last couple of years. I started on this itinerary back in 2022, which is, I think, the second year we started running trips in Maine. And things have just blossomed ever since. We've added a second team a year after that, and then a third team just this new year. So we now have a total of, I think, 9 departures going out this year. It is a very limited season, so end of September, start of October is the timeline we're looking for. But we'll get into that. So very, very excited to be here, everybody. Let's get going. First off, I always love to start off my presentations with talking about, NatHab and NatHab's mission. Our mission here at Natural Habitat is conservation through exploration. We're inviting, like-minded, conservation-minded individuals to come and travel with us to protect our planet, to inspire these people to protect their own backyards, to value the places. And I have this wonderful opportunity, which I quite love, to work in the U.S. National Park Service. I was born and raised in Utah with 5 wonderful national parks, and have grown up with a deep underlying value of our public land and national park system. And so to be able to travel in the U.S., especially for you folks who are looking to do so, hopefully, especially after today, to conserve this beautiful land that we still have, I think is highly valuable in the places we get to do. We get to support local communities by traveling and supporting them, and allowing them or contracting with them to support us in our food, in our lodging, in our guiding, which I really do love to do, and hopefully boldly influence the entire of the travel industry to do the same. A little bit about our partnership with the WWF. The World Wildlife Fund partnership began in 2003. They did just re-up that partnership for, I think, all the way up through 2028, so another 5 years, or back when they did that, which was a couple years ago. And it has been a wonderful partnership for many years. We do share conservation values to protect our planet, to protect those communities that are attached to those ecosystems. NatHab has directly contributed over $8.5 million, and more importantly, our guests have donated over $50 million to conservation projects put on by the World Wildlife Fund. We're adding value to habitats, supporting local communities. The one particular initiative I wanted to talk about today is in regard to the coast of Maine. WWF recently partnered with an organization called Oceans 2050, but in particular, they're what they call their global seaweed project, basically supporting locals along coastal communities to start seaweed farms. Seaweed is beneficial in many, many ways. It is a carbon sequestering plant. It does pull acidity from ocean ecosystems, and it also does provide very, very valuable habitat as well as food sources to fishing communities and for people. It is a very sustainable food. You can see this is a line being pulled out. This is one of the farms on the coast of Maine that we don't unfortunately get the opportunity to see on this itinerary, but it is very close to home, and things that myself and local guides often talk about as these seaweed growing projects. I highly encourage everyone to look into it. Oceans 2050, they have a wonderful website, and to see this really burgeoning conservation story of seaweed farming along the coast. So directly affected, which is pretty cool for the Maine itinerary to see that WWF is directly affecting the ecosystem of the Gulf of Maine. The purpose of this presentation, we're going to go over what to expect on this expedition, a little bit of a rough itinerary. Of course, we're still a couple months out from our actual trips and trying to nail down the last itinerary pieces. But we will be going over kind of what to expect generally along this expedition, some guidelines for climate, packing gear. For those veteran NetHab travelers, many of this will be familiar to you. But hopefully, my goal here is to dispel your doubts and fears about the trip and hopefully get people excited to be traveling to Maine with us, if not this year, and the years to come. A quick introduction for myself. I know Rob gave me a little bit of an introduction. This was a fun photo I took in the winter of a Yellowstone that is Old Faithful behind me this last winter. My name is Kaden Dearing. I grew up in Ogden, Utah, which is about an hour north of Salt Lake City, which is an ideal spot for where I love to do things. It's about 4 hours from the desert to the south and 3 hours from Yellowstone to the north. And so I grew up as a Boy Scout for many, many years in the Grand Teton, Yellowstone area. I was actually there about 2 weeks ago at this camp I worked at for many, many years. So continuing that environmental education and that community that I've been a part of for so long. I've been guiding for NetHab since 2021. I do guide in the Southwest a lot in the springtime, so our new Moab and Sedona trips. I do, of course, our traditional canyons trip, and I am the lead guide for the Southwest, that's kind of my backyard. I do guide up in Glacier. I guide in Yellowstone in the summer. I do, of course, guide along the beautiful coast of Maine in Acadia National Park, and then, of course, winter Yellowstone with the wolves in January and February. So I do work for NetHab full time. I am, typically running anywhere from 10 to 14 trips of theirs a year, and I absolutely love it. So a little bit about me. Been guiding a long time and lovely to keep it going. Again, as an expedition leader, I like to go over, for all sorts of different guiding companies for different tours that you travel with, the leader takes a different role. And I want to, spell out, this is what you're going to see in any kind of expedition leader presentation from any NetHab guide, is that our first priority is always safety. We're always out here to make sure that you're safe, that you're enjoying yourself, but you're not going to be able to enjoy yourself if you're either sick or injured. And luckily, knock on wood, if I can find some here, we have had very few, in my experience, injuries or illnesses this last year. Of course, we were dealing with COVID there for a minute, but a lot of that has passed. And generally, we're able to, have minimal disruptions in regards to safety, which is a wonderful thing. Of course, we are all trained in wilderness first responder training, which will be able to deal with 95% of the bumps and bruises that we experience out in these beautiful places. Of course, just as important, but just a step down, is being a naturalist and a guide. I separate those two out because naturalizing and guiding are two different things in my mind. Coming here, and if you can see in this photo, there actually is a barred owl in this photo. So it's sometimes difficult to see. I wish I'd gotten a better shot, but I didn't have my long lens on me that day. But this was a barred owl that we saw last year in Acadia National Park. I had the opportunity to actually watch him hunt snakes in this wetland area, which is pretty amazing. But be able to talk about what he's doing out there. What are these calls that he's making? Why is he hunting in this particular area? Is there a partner nearby? Is he feeding chicks? Is it a nesting season? What is his importance as a predator in this ecosystem? These are all these things that we would talk about as we're naturalizing. And of course, guiding, knowing the places, knowing where to go. And what I often find myself doing is being what a lot of us call the guide on the side. You can be the sage on the stage, which is kind of the naturalizing part. You're going to sit here and we're going to talk about biology and ecosystems and trophic cascade and all these beautiful things. But being a guide is letting people discover the beauty of the natural world for themselves, which I think is one of the many things that a lot of my colleagues are so good at. Of course, we're also local travel experts. We've been in these areas for many years and seen a lot of different weather conditions, a lot of different eventualities that can happen, ticks and things that I'll talk about a little bit later. Those things that you will want to know as first timers in an area that we have and that knowledge. And so please, you utilize your expedition leader on any NatHab trip that you take with us. Zooming a little more in on kind of our itinerary we're talking about today. This is a beautiful map of Maine. As you can see, I have circled down there about mid-coast on the map here. That is the area that we will be traveling on this itinerary. So you see at the top of that circle is a little city called Bangor. Right in there. Bangor is a beautiful town. At one point was the largest lumber producing city in the world, as well as the East Coast. This is back in the late 1800s, turn of the century. It has since kind of post-industrialized and calmed back down. It is a beautiful town that what's his name? Stephen King does own a house at, and for many years was distributing king-size candy bars every Halloween. From what I hear about from the locals in Bangor. But this is the start of our adventure there in Bangor, and we'll be traveling around the Penobscot Bay area. Here's a zoomed in view of the Penobscot Bay area. The top there you can see coming down from Ellsworth and Rockport. That is our road up to Bangor. We come on down through Rockport essentially, and then our first 2 days spent down in Camden and Rockland area. Rockland is both beautiful New England towns with a very rich sailing and shipbuilding history for both of them. In Camden, that is where we get to enjoy our beautiful two-masted schooner ride out into the bay, the Penobscot Bay area, which is really a highlight of the trip. Spend 2 days there in Camden, and then we move on up around the top of the bay here down into a beautiful place called Deer Isle, which is down right in here, and Stonington, where we get to spend 2 nights at a widely award-winning bed and breakfast called the Pilgrim's Inn. And the Pilgrim's Inn is an old 17th century colonial home that's been used as a sawmill and as a boarding house and all these things over the years. That is really wonderful. This is kind of the quiet retreat section of our trip along the coast of Maine. Really beautiful spot, very remote. We got to spend some time out there. We'll take a nice private, ferry ride out to some of these islands down here on what's called the Deer Isle Thoroughfare. I'm out to see parts of the island out here on Isle Ho is the most remote part. As you can see, the green sections here on my map are Acadia National Park, Isle Ho being the most remote section of Acadia National Park. Unfortunately, I will say due to some permitting issues, we're no longer able to hike on the park itself there at Isle Ho, though we will hike in many other places on Deer Isle and different parts of Acadia National Park. But we will get to spend the day out on our private boat tour, checking out the perimeter of the island, some really beautiful lighthouses there, and maybe poke our head a little bit into town as well. That'll be our next 2 days, and then our last 2 days, we come out of Deer Isle, back up to Ellsworth, and down into Mount Desert Island. And this is the very famous part, this very famous section of Acadia National Park. Of course, we have Bar Harbor, which is a nice, really that's where we'll be staying, and Bar Harbor Inn, which is a really beautiful historic inn as well, right there on Frenchman's Bay, in view of the 5 Porcupine Islands, which are absolutely stunning. Seeing all the sailboats and the lobster boats come in and out every day. Be able to experience a little bit of Bar Harbor and some other remote parts of the island. I will mention, as I said, I'm going to give you kind of a basic overview. I will mention that all of the different guiding teams have different priorities and they like to do different things. It's all absolutely beautiful. And I will say, because it is a small guiding team, each guide is of high quality, maybe me being on the bottom rung of the ladder. But we're all in love with the coast, and we do a lot of different things, which is why I intentionally keep it pretty vague, and it is rather exciting. So there are, I do like to take folks out here to the Schoodic Peninsula, which is another recently, as in the last 100 years, added section of Acadia National Park. That is out here on the eastern side. Another beautiful view, actually across Frenchman's Bay to see Mount Desert Island. But again, kind of up to the guide at the time. There's a lot of variability, and there's so much to do and see. It is around every bend. Beautiful ecosystem where the forest meets the sea. So I'm gonna again go kind of into a day-by-day itinerary, as I did just barely. Day one, we go from Bangor down to Camden. This is a really beautiful view of the town of Camden. Excuse me. Really nice. This is kind of the headquarters for the Windjammer Fleet, which is the fleet of historic wooden ships, two-masted, three-masted schooners that come out of the Camden area. And that we'll be able to travel on. I'll show you a nice picture of the Surprise, which is the two-masted schooner. It's about a 100-year-old wooden ship that's in very, very fine condition that we get to sail out of Camden here. Spend some time around there, walking around public lands, checking out. Actually, this view is from the Camden Blue Hills State Park. Spend a little time up there checking out the views as well. Staying at a hotel right down there in town, so you can see just about 400 yards from the water, and really nice views out into the bay. The Lord Camden Inn, which is a wonderful little place. I do like to mention, as we're traveling through, this is maybe my own personal touch. I do often invite everyone, as we're traveling through the state of Maine and through the beautiful forest. It is, of course, very wet, and we love to look at mycology. Mycology being the study of fungus. So I got some of my favorite fungi shots from last year to share with you here, just to maybe create a little bit of hype, but to talk about something that I am particularly passionate about, which is fungus, and the way that they're able to eat and create forest. These true decomposers. You have a really, really nice belted polypore here on the left, growing on the tree, on a stump there, just creating new soils, and this almost nursery stage amanita here on the right, just really poignant colors. Maine is really the scavenger hunt for fungus, if you can find it. Another really beautiful shot. This is what's called a violet-tipped polypore. As you can see, really poignant purple colors. This is I think my favorite from this last year. My favorite discovery. These just things that you would never see unless you stopped and looked for them. The whole idea in my mind of this Maine trip is to stop and look at the little things. You see the vastness of the ocean, and then this closed in, almost home-like feeling of this forest that you get between the two. There's not, we do see a number of seals and along the coastline there. I've yet to see a moose, knock on wood. There are 50,000 in the state, but once you travel there, you'll understand how thick the forest is and how tough those buggers are to find. But regardless of maybe large megafauna, we get to experience a lot of these really, really beautiful features. Again, as Henry David Thoreau put it, I think it was Thoreau, where the forest meets the sea. So day two, moving on with our itinerary after our little fungus detour. That's a nice photo there of the Lord Camden Inn right downtown in Camden. Camden is a cute little town. I do recommend that folks, spend some time shopping if they want to there, checking out all the little shops. This is just right across the road from the harbor. And as you can see, really nice bay-facing views. This is not a picture of the Surprise here on the right, but it is a beautiful two-masted schooner, very, very similar to what we would be sailing on. Again, beautiful highlight of the trip, as well as some other hiking in the area here in Camden. Day three, we drive from Camden to Deer Isle. Now, this is a nice drive that will take most of the day. We do stop generally at some historic locations there at the mouth of the Penobscot River. usually the fort. There's a large bridge that we often stop at. We usually do a hike or two on that day. It is kind of a large transit day, I will say, between the two places. But we do end up here close to this town of Stonington, which is this beautiful view here. A couple of boats, little lighthouse here on the edge of Deer Isle. Stonington at one point in time was the, excuse me, I have to plug in my computer. At one point in time was the largest, the most productive lobster fishery in the entire world. So really well positioned. There is a huge heritage of lobster fishing here on the coast, and some really nice fresh lobster. Again, apologies. Give me just one moment. All right, we're good now. Day 3, yeah. The other thing I will say, obviously from the name Stonington, you'll note that the granite quarries here, I do not have a photo of one currently, but are another famous feature of Stonington. Really beautiful history there. Day 4, Deer Isle. There's a nice photo of the Pilgrim's Inn, again, that nice bed and breakfast I was talking about down there on the left. Beautiful, old, very quirky, eclectic old home. They do run a restaurant out of the bottom there that we eat each of our dinners and breakfasts at, and they send us out with some nice lunches. Typically, in the years past, we'll see, of course, what happens this year for our days out on the boat. There on the right, that is the Idaho Light. That is one of the beautiful, many, many, many lighthouses that we were able to see. One of my favorite photos there off of Idaho as we're traveling there on our private boat trip. Of course, this is our day of our private charter out to Idaho, a nice perimeter tour of the island, a couple of lighthouses. Usually have pretty good birding out there, cormorants and eider ducks and all sorts of things. Excuse me. And we do often see harbor porpoises and harbor seals out there, chilling on the rocks, hanging out, talking all things lobster. Deer Isle, as I mentioned, is the remote getaway of the trip, really a highlight. This is when we move on from Deer Isle. This is a fun photo I took last year at Deer Isle of a couple of the local fishermen out to Mount Desert Island. So we'll be leaving Deer Isle that morning. We'll travel on over to Mount Desert, another large transit day, a couple hour drive, and then get down to Mount Desert Island and start getting into the bulk of Acadia National Park. We'll go out and do a couple of different hikes, into different parts of the island, being able to view some of these large freshwater ponds that exist on Mount Desert Island. Usually do it in a nice field meal. I should mention we do have a mix of meals in restaurants and meals out and away. And I will say that, there often is a quality difference. The meals that we're sitting down and eating within the restaurant are typically a higher quality than our takeaway lunches. But with those takeaway or field lunches that we're doing, the advantage I will say is that we're able to be out for a larger part of the day. We're not tied to going back to any one place because we are in a rather remote area of the coast of Maine and can't stop off at the nicest restaurant every 300 yards. And so this is one of those days where we'll have a nice field lunch and explore a lot of Acadia National Park. I do also like to mention that for those of you who maybe have traveled to Acadia National Park, you might be familiar with names like Sand Beach and the Otter Cliffs and the Thunder Hole and all these very famous locations that exist within Acadia National Park. And while I cannot say a broad definition over all of our guides, but generally I would say on most of my trips I try to avoid these locations because you're going to be there with about 2,000 of your closest friends and strangers, elbow to elbow, crab walking down to see the Thunder Hole, which is really kind of while some people may enjoy such an experience, I think maybe not usually within the scope of a NAHAP trip. And so we do like to go to those places a little bit more far flung. They might not be those postcard locations that everyone gets a photo of, but they truly do characterize Acadia National Park, Mount Desert Island, and the coast of Maine. And so be patient with us on that, but I found that that has always been the better experience for us. So day 6, there's a nice photo of the Bar Harbor Inn right there on the water, as I mentioned, right on the edge of Frenchman's Bay. This is a beautiful old inn that's been there many, many years, and some really nice photo of one of my favorite trails called the Jessup Trail. The Jessup Trail goes through a wetland area. It is a boardwalk, nice and flat. I think it's about a mile and a half round trip. Really, really beautiful fall colors. Of course, that is why I haven't mentioned quite yet, but that is why we do travel to Maine this time of year. I think this year, excuse me, our dates range from about September 16th, 17th to about October at the same time. So about a month time period that we're running these trips. Excuse me. And, things have been changing, but, as a lot of the Mainers like to call us, we are leaf peepers. We do come up for the color change in the forest to experience these beautiful reds and oranges and yellows. And while I failed to include some of larger landscape photos that showed off this color, this is a nice color here on the right. And the color can be finicky. Depending on, of course, climate change has been changing our seasonal cycle. It can be pushed back or pushed forward a couple of weeks. I will say 2 years ago, we had a particularly difficult time because the Bay of Maine is warming up, as a lot of other ocean and other bodies of water are doing. All of those coastal hurricanes that travel up the eastern coast, rather than being stopped in their tracks by this cold Gulf of Maine water, they're actually moving up and hitting more into the coast. And so the coast has been seeing more severe weather patterns. There have been harbors that have been hit and needed serious repairs the last couple of years. And in 2022, what was happening with the forest in particular, of course, this all changes slowly depending on the ecosystem and the topography of the trees you're looking at. The species, when they're changing, it all kind of slowly happens over the span of several weeks. And what was happening in 22 was that several trees or several parts of the forest were changing, and then the hurricane came through and blew off all the leaves. And then another week went by, another week and a half, more and more and more of the forest started changing and getting beautiful again. And then a second hurricane came through and blew it all off. So it was a tough year for a lot of us, and I think a couple of folks were a little sad about it. But these are types of act of God situations that were a little difficult for us. And so we do love the leaf change. Really, it is beautiful, but it likes to be, I don't know if it loves us all the time. That's something to keep in mind. But beautiful day 6, really, really nice. I will say, on a personal note, I am a very large beaver fan, and I do make a point. I have a special spot here on Mount Desert Island that I do like to go and show people a couple of beaver lodges and the dam and a lot of the, we'll say, trophic cascade that comes down from that beautiful location. And so, if you get to travel with me, then we'll go there. Day 7, we go home. Day 7, we will leave Bar Harbor and Mount Desert Island early in the morning, travel back up to Bangor, and see you off in whatever regard that may be. I will say, and this is maybe a more beautiful depiction of the colors that may exist in the coast of Maine here. This is the town of Bangor, and I should say that we do both start and end the trip here in Bangor. General itinerary stuff, as I said, some caveats with that. But kind of keep moving on with a little bit more of the kind of nitty gritty items. These are the various ships we will be traveling on. I failed to mention that last day 6 there in Acadia National Park, we do get the opportunity to travel on a working lobster boat, the Lulu. is an educational lobster boat. So it looks a lot like this guy in the upper left here, except for the back end is lined with seats and covered from the top. But they do pull lobster pots. They do show us what it's like to fish for lobster. They talk about the industry. They talk about, lobster uh, biology and all these types of things. And that really is a fun opportunity and experience for us. So a nice private trip on the lobster boat. There on the bottom, that is a full boat. Won't quite look like that when we're on it, but that is a full load on the Otter, which is the ferry that comes off of Deer Isle down into Idaho. So really nice upper seating, nice back deck, nice inside depending on the weather that we'll get to spend on that boat. And then here on the right, that is the Surprise. So that is our two-masted schooner. Like I said, 100 or something year old ship that's in really, really fine condition, with a wonderful couple, a local couple that take us out on those beautiful days, and we get under sail, which is really beautiful. So a couple of those boat rides, I will say, are big highlights of the trip, to be able to experience the water and be out on the coast. So yeah, we're gonna kind of get into group travel ethics, a couple, like I said, a little more logistics here. This is our guest code of conduct. We want to ensure, because we are small group nature travel trips, as most of our other tours are, this is limited to 13 people max, plus 2 guides. It is important that participants behave in respectful and collaborative manners. We just ask that you be considerate, you respect nature, and you respect others. It can really turn a trip rather sour when any of those things are violated. And it can be some of the, most enlightening experiences to have a group that really comes together, really bands together, and really experiences these beautiful landscapes, together in a friendly community building manner. And that is, a higher priority for us here at NatHab, and for me as an expedition leader personally. So we want to be considerate and flexible. A couple of things I have there on the bottom, like smoking. I did have a couple of folks, a couple of folks from this trip pictured here, who were smokers, and we just asked that they smoked. If you do smoke, that you do so far away from the vehicles and from the buildings, and from the group in general. And that if that's something that is important for you, that you can talk to your expedition leader, and they will find those locations for you to do so. Alcoholic consumption, I guide in the Rocky Mountains all the time, and I say, hey, you got to be careful. You're going to be a cheap date up here at 8,000 feet in elevation. That's not such a problem there in Maine. We do like to, treat our guests to libations. The opening dinner and the closing dinner, that's on NatHab, but generally all those other nights, that will be on your own tab. We always ask that people be on time. We do really like to pack in these trips and try to, get the most out of your day in, sunrise to sunset. And so we just ask that people be on time. But you'll always have the option to sit out of activities if you're not feeling too well. If you're really, really feeling like you want to sit at the accommodations or at the Pilgrim's Inn, you want to go sit by the pond and watch the ducks, then that's always an option if that's something that you don't want to go at such a quick pace. But we do pack our days nice and full. So important to be on time. On cell phone usage, I will say in Maine, surprisingly, you do lose service quite a bit of time. There will be some remote parts, especially on our traveling days, where you will not have access to cell phone service. But generally, where we go and stay, there is Wi-Fi, and it does work rather well. So important things to keep in mind as far as staying in contact. But I will recommend for all of those of you who are booked on this itinerary or will book on this itinerary, you will receive a pre-departure briefing. And those pre-departure briefings are vastly more in-depth than maybe what I'm sharing today, as far as gear, as far as schedule, as far as reading recommendations for preparing for the trip, and that type of thing. Gratuities, all those things are included in there. So you will receive a pre-departure briefing, and all of those. And of course, if you can't have all your questions answered by me or that booklet, you can always reach out to your person at the NatHab office, and they will hopefully answer your questions to the best of their abilities. This is the physical requirements for the trip. It is rated as easy. We do travel to 4 different locations over 8 days. As we're traveling in our vehicles, we do get in and out of the vehicle quite often. You always have the option to stay in, of course, but something to keep in mind. And then this bottom section is the most important. You must be able to walk 3 miles unassisted on dirt and rock trails, uneven terrain, steep inclines, muddy or slippery surfaces. Some days we might have more than one scheduled hike. And so it's important to be physically independent. You know that we do only have 2 guides for 13 guests. So if we have 7 people who really need an arm, you know, the whole hike, it might be rather difficult for us. Things to keep in mind. Of course, we're always there to lend a hand and watch, especially on those difficult and slippery surfaces. There are a couple of surfaces, I will say, that are entirely grown over with roots and rocks and things, and they can be quite slippery. And so if you do have a pair of trekking poles that you particularly love, highly recommend. But we do provide trekking poles, at least enough for one per individual through NatHab as well. So if that's something you're interested in, I highly recommend. And get out, not just on your, if you're training to do this trip, don't just get out there and walk on your concrete, you know, loop that you do every Sunday or every day, but to really, you know, get into areas where it's going to be a strain, maybe on your ankles and knees and your all your joints, because this is kind of be the trip for that. Self-care, you know, you got to make sure our dietary and meals, we've really been doubling down on making sure everyone's dietary restrictions are being met, that all allergies are taken care of. If this is a concern for you, again, reach out to your representative at the office, and especially that expedition leader when you get out. But I will say, all the restaurants and all of the places that we've been to in Maine have been really very good at accommodating any kind of dietary needs. We always get this question. We do take lots of bathroom breaks. I like to do at least one every hour, if not hour and a half, to make sure that everyone's staying hydrated and may continue to stay hydrated and not feel like they might run into an emergency on the back end. We do want to make sure you get adequate rest, as I mentioned. I know I'm always exhausted at the end of a trip, and I know that oftentimes my guests are also exhausted because we do have very full days. And so I often recommend that, you know, people go to bed early, that they take naps in the van on those transfer days, and that you remain healthy so that you can have a really nice quality trip. If you, again, on the medical and allergy front, if you have any of those concerns, reach out to your representative, reach out to your expedition leader when you get here. My co-guide, Derek, who I guided with on this itinerary for years and years, has more allergies than anyone else I know. And so we're not unfamiliar with any kind of difficulty that may come along in regards to getting you fed. So no worries there. Health and safety, I do need to mention this on behalf of NatHab. If you become ill in your adventure, we will consult a healthcare professional. We have a 24-hour virtual health service that we can contact to get you on the phone with a physician to talk through symptoms, to talk through remedies, to talk through possible courses of action. Of course, our decision, if it comes to the point that we need to remove someone from a trip, it's based off of symptoms, not the type of illness that they may have. I'm talking COVID primarily. The decision is going to be a direct following of that recommendation from the virtual health physician. And of course, we will provide assistance, logistics to be able to return you if that is, in the very off chance, needs to happen. And I will say, in my NatHab career, I've not had to send anyone home for health concerns before, though it does happen. Again, moving forward here, a couple of things to keep in mind in regards to packing. I will say layers is always the best way to go about it. As you can see in this photo here, you have a nice base layer, which can be some kind of sweat making material, or a thermal sweat wicking material, which is very nice. It gets the sweat away from your body, and also keeps you nice and warm. We do get pretty cold days here in Maine, so I highly recommend people bringing a thermal layer. You want that mid layer of some kind of fleece, This is really your heating layer, some kind of fleece or hoodie or something like that. And then, of course, your outer layer being a windbreaker or a rain jacket. It does, as you can imagine, rain quite often in Maine. And so rain pants, rain jacket, I would highly recommend if you're feeling really gung-ho. You maybe want to get gaiters for your boots to keep your boots dry. I do wear bean boots, which are, of course, made by Maine's own LL Bean, but they are exceptionally good at waterproofing and keeping a lot of that stuff out. So waterproof boots, shoes, again, rough terrain, I do highly recommend, especially if you have tough ankles, some boots, some higher angle boots to support those ankles. It can be quite nice. I will say I've also gotten a tick before in the state of Maine. They are around. I brought one home with me a couple years ago and I had to pluck it off the back of my knee. And so permethrin, it can be a really good choice for washing with your clothes as a bug deterrent, or any kind of spray, deep, long socks, of course, long pants, highly recommended for all of these things. Again, on the luggage side of things, soft-sided luggage, which is in all of the NetHab material that you bring. We do have a limited travel space. We do not have a third vehicle on this itinerary in order to just transport luggage. So all of your luggage will be with us on all those transfer days. So we just ask that you do try your best not to overpack. Check out the weather beforehand. Keep things rather minimal is the hope. We do our very best if you show up with 3 large luggage pieces, but we really hope you don't. Of course, scopes, binoculars, hiking poles, all those are included. And again, any Maine in particular, we do get sunny days along the coast, so sunglasses, sun hat, essential. Any kind of rain, wind protection is essential. And then as in regards to shoes and boots, some nice hiking shoes, sturdy shoes or boots for those trails. And then if you want a nice, around the town, walking shoe, and that would be something else I would recommend. Of course, all this is in the pre-departure briefing. In regards to gratuities, this is going to talk about in regards to money in general. The pre-departure briefing will talk about what's included on the trip, what's not. If you're going to need cash or access to ATMs. I always tell everyone that as expedition leaders, we do tip out all of our contracting companies to the highest of the company standards. We do take very good care of all those people that we work with in the field. The only person you need to worry about tipping is your expedition leader. There's a really nice e-tipping option that is included. You'll get an email from that basically towards the end of your trip. But I do know a lot of the guides also appreciate cash tips if that's something that you would also like to do. Of course, we do have the photo share. This is, as you can see, from October 2024. But we do have, as an NetHab guest, you'll have access to this photo share system that will stay up for several years, so that all of those photos that everyone takes, that the guides take, that all the guests take on our trips can be uploaded and downloaded from basically a shared Dropbox or a shared folder that exists on the NetHab website. A really, really wonderful resource for everybody so that we can all share those beautiful photos and we can just download them right after the trip immediately. And again, you will receive an email on your trip on instructions how to do this. You can always ask your expedition leader. And this is a really wonderful resource. If you're one of those people that is trying to get away from the camera or away from the phone, then this is a really good opportunity to do so. And then just maybe borrow a couple of those photos from some of your fellow travelers to show your friends and family. And that is just about it. Thank you all for listening to me again. This is one last thing before I wrap up. That I missed another highlight of the trip. This photo reminded me of. This is a photo of the sunrise on Cadillac Mountain. Cadillac Mountain is one of the highest points on the eastern seaboard within a mile of the ocean, and so it is actually the location of the first sunrise or the first moment of light every morning on the continental U.S. And so we get to travel up to the top of Cadillac Mountain and enjoy this beautiful sunrise, one of our days on Mount Desert Island in Acadia. So definitely a wonderful, wonderful highlight of the trip, um, to see the first sun in the U.S. So hoping that everyone feels excited, and then I can answer some questions. Thank you all so much.
All right, Kaden, thank you so much. So before we dive into the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that if you do have questions, you can submit them via the question field in your control panel. Just go to the upper right-hand corner, click on those three lines. You'll drop down the menu, go to questions, and submit them there, and we'll get to them right now. All right, Kaden. So we get to see a gorgeous sunrise. On Cadillac Mountain. Are we going to be driving up that, or is that a hike? And is that the highest elevation that we're going to see?
Yes, so that will be the highest elevation. It's just over, I want to say it's around 1,500 feet of elevation at the top there. We do drive, yes. So there are options to hike. It's a long ways, and you definitely be getting up at 3, 4 a.m. to do so. And so we do drive. Cadillac Mountain, for those who know, has actually installed a reservation system. The parking area is rather limited, and it is a rather popular opportunity for people there. And so we do get reservations the day of that we go. We're able to drive up and walk 100 yards max on a kind of a paved, or step off onto the rocks if you'd like to view that sunrise.
Gotcha. Thank you. So in general, would you say that we're hiking at a pretty fast pace, or are we going to be meandering along more than that?
I will say that it depends on the group dynamics. There are, I would, in any given group, we have 13 guests and 2 guides, and generally I'd say, each guide take kind of a front or rear, oftentimes, and sometimes I have guests that really want to get after it, and they're really trying to get in miles, and they want to do a lot of walking. And depending on how many in the group want to do so, we definitely take that into consideration. If you're trying to go fast, if you're trying to do lots of things, of course, we have to, come to the trailhead and leave from the trailhead all as a group, so that can be a limiting factor. But sometimes we also get group dynamics that everyone loves to stop and look at the little things. This is where I love to encourage our fungal exploration, because there's so many little things to be looking at that we miss. And I would say that we strike a balance between the two. Um, lots of opportunity for those who like to stop and look to be able to have that opportunity, and for those to maybe do a little bit more walking to add on an extra piece. But again, it depends on the group. It depends on the dynamic, but no person left behind. So you'll always be taken care of on trail, and have some opportunity, as long as you don't, you know, consigned to feeling pressure from the group to keep moving on. I would say, unless we're in dire straits, lots of time to do both.
Great. Thank you. So what if I'm interested in seeing some of these harbors and the boats? Are we going to have time to maybe look at some of these areas, take some pictures?
Sure, yeah. Camden, as I mentioned, we like to stop in Camden. Camden Harbor is open. You'll have time in town if you'd like to spend more time down walking along the harbor. There's a lot of beautiful wooden ships, a couple of masted schooners. Difficult to get onto them. A lot of them are moored in locations that you can't get onto them, but you'll be able to get within 50 yards and check them out, and even ask people who are walking by, or the folks that work on the ships, what the deal is. But we have lots of time in Camden. I do like to spend a little bit of time in Stonington. We don't stay on Deer Isle in Stonington proper. We do stay probably about 10-15 minute drive from Stonington. But if that's something that you are interested in, that you would like to, spend a little more time, along the harbor there, you can definitely reach out to your expedition leader and ask for some time there. And also at Bar Harbor, we do stay right there on the coast. And so, yes, lots and lots of time to do some ship viewing and talking about the various lovely names that all these little boats are named, which are quite funny often. So, absolutely.
So, Caden, if I'm lucky enough to live within driving distance of the trip, will there be a place where I can leave my car for the duration of it?
Yes. So I didn't mention, I can't remember if I included the photo or not. So we do stay at the Marriott in Bangor, which is definitely the nicest accommodation in Bangor, and they have been very good for us in the last couple of years for allowing people to leave their cars. They have a nice back lot that's kind of separated from the surrounding area, where people have been able to park their car more long term. And we've been able to arrange that with folks. As well as the Bangor airport oftentimes can have options, just kind of depending on what your after travel plans are. But yes, we will definitely accommodate for you.
Thank you, Caden. So we've had a lot of interest in beavers, actually. Are we going to see beavers on this trip at all? Is that possible?
Oh, it's always a goal. It's always a goal. I Beavers are tough. Beavers are nocturnal. First off, so they don't like to be up when we're up and about and doing things. Um, we do see a lot of beaver infrastructure, as I mentioned. I do like to take folks. This is again a personal interest of mine, out to this dammed small pond with several lodges on it. We often do see wood ducks there, which is really cool. Painted turtles, all that kind of thing. I have yet to see beavers on that pond. I have seen beavers in other locations in Maine, but on that pond in particular, not so much. So it's the luck of the draw. It depends on you know the time of day, oftentimes, and the time of year, and where we're at. So I can't guarantee it, as any good expedition leader would say. But there are places that we have good opportunities to see them. So
Excellent. Thank you. And so, how well staffed are the parks these days? Any impact to the itinerary?
Uh, so, yeah, I'm sure y'all are referring to kind of this drama that was happening with the National Park Service this last spring and a lot of firing of employees. I do have many, many friends who work for the National Park Service, both as these kind of temporary seasonal workers as well as longtime workers. And as far as I know, all those folks who were laid off have actually been rehired. Many of the temporary folks chose to leave just kind of because of the volatility of the whole situation. Um, but I can't speak for Acadia, as I haven't been out there on the ground yet this year. I'm not expecting any problems. I haven't seen anything that have been published by the National Park Service, but just kind of speaking from a Western park standpoint, we are back to normal in almost every regard. So, good question.
Great news. Thank you. So, are puffins a possibility at this time of year or in Maine in general?
So, unfortunately, not this time of year. There are a couple of nonprofits in the area. So Rockland, I mentioned, it's just outside of Camden on those first 2 days. There is what's called the Puffin Project, which was this nonprofit that kind of spearheaded the reestablishment of the puffin population along the coast of Maine to several different like Egg Rock and all these different historic nesting sites along the coast. Unfortunately, during the fall time, the puffins are no longer nesting and they're out rafting, is the term, basically in these really large uh, groups out on the open ocean in the Atlantic. And so they're very, very far out in the open ocean, feeding and preparing for the next spring of nesting. So, unfortunately, not this time of year on the coast of Maine.
Great. No worries. Thank you. So, I do have a really, really important question to ask you, Caden. We're coming
Mm.
to Maine. Is there going to be a fresh lobster dinner?
You'll have so many opportunities for a fresh lobster dinner. You will have no idea what to do with yourself. There will be so much lobster. Um, I think we were keeping track of it last year, and if you would like the opportunity to eat lobster every meal, I'm pretty sure, maybe barring one or two, you could have lobster every meal. And all the local fishermen you'll talk to, the lobster fishery has a very interesting story. It is very highly regulated. I would say it's one of the more ethical fisheries in the world, ethically sustainable. It's supporting the local community. I am a big fan of the lobster fishery in general, and so I would encourage folks to do so. But yes, lots of lobster, and it is good.
Terrific news. Thank you, Kaden. Well, unfortunately, that will be the last question that we do have time for today. So I'd like to hand it back to you for any closing comments you may have for us.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, great questions, everybody. I would just, again, if you're interested, reach out to your NatHab representative. Like I said, this may be the year or here soon. We just added a new guiding team. They've been doing some scouting earlier in the year. They've been getting out there, been sharing a lot of information in regards to this beautiful trip. Things have been gearing up. Maine is a beautiful, beautiful place. It might not have these large, lion encounters and wildebeests of Africa, um, but it is a quiet retreat of a trip that we get to spend time on the water, seeing the birds, really taking in this beautiful, chilly, wonderful, colorful forest. That for me, it's the end of my season every year, and it's almost like this really nice winding down. Um, Things come a lot calmer in Maine, and I just encourage everyone, if not with us, travel there on your own or with someone else. So appreciate the time today.
Kaden, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel to Maine with NatHab, please give us a call at 800-543-8917 or send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.